everyone, Ivy League Gaming here, and today we're playing Dragonheir, Silent Gods. For today's video, we're going to talk about the hero system regarding the different elements and hero types and how it all synergizes together. Alright, so I know I really loved the little guide they had here on Discord regarding the character system as far as creating your main character. And I figured I would continue going through some of these guides, talking through them with you and giving my input as we talk about the different things, because they're just giving you the basics, but I can give you the really how to apply it, how and some real character examples and stuff based on my own experience. So this isn't just going to be me reading this and that's it. It's going to be me responding and giving suggestions based on this information, the best elements to use, the way you need to work with certain hero types and how they synergize. And yeah, it's gonna be a fun convo, and I really hope this helps new players understand the system and kind of how it all works together. All right, change the screen to be more zoomed in. I realized it doesn't really cut much off for these except for this one picture, so easier just to look at it like this. All right, let's go, let's go. So, along the adventure in the content of Adenthia, you will need companions that fight alongside you. In Dragonheir Silent Gods, other than your player character, or your MC, your main character, there are also hundreds of heroes for you to recruit and develop. You can deploy up to 5 companions in battle. This article will walk you through a few topics, including hero categories, roles, basic attributes, and sources. So let's first start with the 6 elements. So heroes can be categorized by their element type, including fire, ice, necrosis, radiant, lightning, and poison. So these are the categories of the hero, and the type of damage that they do is that's what they say next. Heroes' skills of different elemental types can deal the associated elemental damage. Also, most heroes have an exclusive role mechanic based on their element. Every 2 heroes will often have synergy effects as well. More details on that one in the hero roles section. Alright, yeah, so like, there's a separate, besides doing their just attack, it'll say like they deal cold damage, they deal fire damage. That is extra damage that they deal. And yeah, let's get into that a little bit deeper and how these are going to synergize. So Elemental Affinity, while in combat based on the deployed heroes of your adventurer team, an Elemental Affinity effect can be triggered. If that's the case, your team will get to enjoy additional attribute bonuses. How to trigger the effects? 6 elements are split into groups of 2. If among the 5 deployed heroes, there are at least 3 with elements in the same group, the associated elemental affinity effect will become active. As new seasons are introduced, the rule sets of these elemental effects will rotate. For example, in Season 0, Fire and Radiance were in the same group, but now it's changed. So this picture is last season. Why are they showing last season? Pause. No. Why are they showing last season? So this is the current season affinity. Poison and fire, lightning and radiant, and ice and necrosis. So these are going to synergize really well. I'm not sure what the rest of the article says, so I might be speaking too soon. But yeah, this is from my video that's I have pulled up here from yesterday. But ideally, when you're talking at least 3 of one, it could be anything. It could be 2 poison DPS and then your fire adventurer, and that's the synergy for the 3, and then 2 others could just be support units helping to keep them alive, or a tank, or whatever, for example. So you're going to get the most benefit by having 5 of a category of a little bundle here. But really, for the most part, just covering the 3 is really crucial because the bonuses are pretty huge. Like as it shows here, 20% increased attack, 20% increased defense, and you get more as you expand later on in the game. So that list keeps growing, and it's really, really nice and really helpful. And the 5 affinity bonus is elemental damage bonus. So that's been one thing I think is not as beneficial for the necrosis side of things, because a lot of the necrotic stuff is based around summoners. And summoners summon skeletons, summon whatever, to do a lot of their damage. And unless their kit says deals necrosis damage on every skill, or at least their ultimate for an AoE, if it's just involving the summon itself, I don't believe, I could be wrong, I don't believe the summon itself is doing elemental damage. I think it's just doing generic basic hits, attacks. I'm not quite sure though. That makes me question everything now that I say that out loud again. But I have had this conversation with someone thinking that maybe the whole elemental affinity bonus really doesn't affect the summons. It only affects the actual hero producing a damage with the skill. So it might be less important to have a full team of 5 elemental affinity if you're working with summoners. Just something to keep in mind and maybe test out. All right, let's go down. So go into Psychic Core and then your elemental affinity, and you spend your affinity solvents to level up your elemental affinities and provide additional bonuses to the elemental affinity effects of various element groups and grades. Affinity solvents can be obtained from various quests or by exploring in the in-game world. So that's this. This is how you do. That's how you expand what I'm talking about. The affinity bonuses that you add here, that you choose to add, that's what affects your 3 hero synergy up there. So it does play a really big role. And it does depend on which one you're clicked on, whether or not you expanded to add accuracy, resistance, whatever it might be. All right, so the hero roles are where it gets really interesting. In Dragonheir Silent Gods, hundreds of heroes have separated into 8 roles. Among them, 6 roles are exclusive to each element type, respectively as defensive support. They are general roles present for each elemental group. So the unique things, fire with wild as a type. The fire element has an exclusive mechanic. Some fire heroes have this mechanic. Effects upon using a skill, there's a 30% chance to trigger an effect that increases the skill damage this time to 120%. So it's just, if you proc wild with the roll of a die, because that's what it's all about, if you have a chance with that chance, you get just your skill hits harder. Simple as that. But it can make a huge difference. And there's some wonderful new heroes like Elfie that really encourage higher chances of the allies proccing wild that I think are going to be really helpful in content. And yeah, it's the kind of thing where you want, all of these are the kind of thing where you want multiple heroes, not just one. People are going to benefit by helping each other add a buff or have a higher chance to proc, or if an ally is under wild, then blah, 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 blah. Like, you're going to have those types of synergy with all of these special roles. And it's almost never going to be the case that you would just use one wild hero, one frost hero, one summon hero, that sort of thing. All right, so the skills of some of these heroes have this effect, while the skills of some heroes can even enhance the wild effect for the entire team or trigger derivative effects. For example, the passive skill of Flora, the Crimson Iris. When an ally triggers their wild, Flora's familiar will automatically cast a fireball. So her little dragon, you know, that dragon that Flora has, he'll just do some extra damage every time an ally triggers wild. So the more wild procs happening, the more often her familiar is going to cast a fireball. So you definitely want to have usually I would say 3 of the thing, like 3 wild, 3 frost in the team to really benefit well. All right, next is ice with the frost type. Don't confuse it. I would always try to call the element ice, not frost, because frost is specific type. So this is some skills of ice heroes will be enhanced when they impact a target inflicted with frost. The skills of some of these heroes can inflict frost on enemies, while the skills of some heroes can even enhance the frost effects of the entire team or trigger derivative effects. For example, the passive skill of Vitar, the Lady of Gal, turns the battlefield into a freezing place, making enemies inflicted with frost trigger additional effects. So like there's a lot of fun things, like I said. If something is under frost, then something happens. So like when attacking an enemy under frost deals extra whatever damage, that's going to be what you want. And the more allies on your team that have that, the better, to encourage that to be up at all times. So Necrosis, same idea. Oh yeah, Rally, Dauntless, we get all the things. All right, so Necrosis. The Necrosis element has exclusive mechanic. All right, they copied and pasted some of this, and apparently they just said fire heroes are all in every element. All right, so same thing like the others, but this says they can. So the skills of some heroes can enhance the summoned units, trigger derivative effects, or even sacrifice the summoned units. For example, the ultimate of Luanis, the Lady of Dark Ruins, sacrifices friendly summoned units to deal massive necrotic damage. This skill scales as the more units are sacrificed. Love it. I love me a summoner team. I really hope that's something I can play with this season. I mean, I'm going to be doing my free-to-play account more so who knows what I choose to do, but depends on what we pull, I guess. All right, now we're on to Radiance. Rally is a fun one. So, targets affected by Rally, blah, blah, blah. All right. So, some skills of some heroes can apply Rally on themselves or teammates, while the skills of some heroes can trigger additional effects when they are used on allies already affected by Rally. For example, the ultimate of Elvis, the Hypocrite. When applying buffs on allies, you can apply the same buffs on more allies affected by Rally, on one more ally affected by Rally at the cost of that Rally status. So he has like a single target applying a buff. It can kind of copy the buffs, add extra buffs type deal. It's interesting. He's got a cool kit, but I've never actually used him. I don't really know if he does damage himself, but I kind of like his kit. It always seems like it sounded like it really can enable a Rally team on paper anyway. But there's a lot of that. There's a lot, especially with the new characters that I read, of if the hero is under Rally, they ignore defense. If the hero is under Rally, they deal 30% extra damage. Like, so having someone that can add Rally to other allies is really helpful as well in the team. So now we're down to Dauntless with the lightning element. So they have so many typos in this, it's insane. So these heroes are good at using their basic attacks to eliminate enemies. Their fast combos of basic attacks can deal massive damage as synergies. The skill of some Dauntless hero can apply specific statues on allies, enemies for basic attacks of Dauntless heroes, then they could trigger additional effects. While some other skills can even increase the attack speed of these Dauntless heroes. For example, the ultimate of Vani, the Wanderer, increases the attack speed of Dauntless allies. Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of increases attack speed type things around Dauntless. Plus, there's also with Dauntless, the biggest thing is basic attacks, basic skills. So, just the basic, we're talking. But, luckily, a lot of the Dauntless kits for the battle skill, and even some for the ultimate, say, this attack counts as a basic attack. Or this skill counts as a basic attack. So that really comes in handy with some of the passives that are like, every time they deal 5 basic attacks, such and such happens. That's where the fact that they're worded to count as basic attacks really do matter. So when you're looking for those Dauntless people, everything is around attack speed, attack speed, attack speed. And yeah, the more often they hit, the better for the most part. And they might surprise you being able to deal damage quickly, even though they're mostly single target, because they are all about that fast burst speed and ramping up damage as well. All right, next up we have poison. So poison element has exclusive mechanic as well. So every 5 seconds deals poison derivative damage based on the max HP of the targets inflicted with poison. So poison is also poison is poison. This is the worst, silliest thing. I think they should call the debuff toxic, or they should call the element toxic. I guess I don't know. Well, one of these should be called toxic instead of poison. Because then you're like, oh, I have a poison hero, but do you mean he has a poison debuff, or he's just a poison hero? Or does he just deal just poison damage, or is it a poison debuff? It's kind of that loop of talking in circles of like, wait, the debuff is completely separate. The debuff of poison requires accuracy to land, just like any other debuff, and it's a damage over time skill. So, all right, so let's see. Well, some others, all right. Some other skills can even trigger the poison damage or inflict additional effects on the targets affected by poison. For example, the passive skill of Eli, the forest resident, deals additional poison derivative damage to enemies inflicted with poison. And when we're talking about derivative damage, this is where you need enlightenment to boost the damage. So that's where that comes in handy. All right, now we have defense role. This is a general role that applies to heroes of various element types. Heroes of this role are good at tanking damage and protecting the others on their team. Yeah, if it says defense, they're meant to be the tank on the front line. Simple as that, not too much else to complicate that there. Now, support's a bit more complicated, which of course they're not going to say, but I'm going to say. This is a general role that applies to heroes of various element types. This role is good at enhancing the combat power of allies or reducing the combat power of enemies. But don't let the word support confuse you. Support heroes can also be extremely good damage dealers. Let's just use Vorash as the example, Questa as an example. Some people hit really hard. So if you're looking to build a team with DPS units, don't let support fool you. Try out the hero, see how hard they hit, and you might be surprised that some of the support units are the hardest hitters in the game. It just isn't as obvious because it says support. So when you see support, you don't think DPS. I kind of wish some things were classified different, but I guess you could only try to narrow things down so well. I mean, if you think about Raid Shadow Legends, right? That game, for example, that you have Seer as a support hero, but she's a damage dealer. It's just a different type of support. That's all. Now we're going to go through the different attributes, and these are kind of the stuff that you're going to find, just the general attributes for the characters along the side. But yeah, this is your gear. This is what this is how your gear is going to affect your character as well. So these are important. HP is the amount of damage a hero can take before they're defeated. It's your health. It's your HP. Simple enough. Attack directly affects the damage output of most heroes. Defense, the effect of the this affects the amount of incoming damage reduced for a hero. The higher the defense, the more damage is reduced. So that's one of those things that, like, ignoring defense is really good for an attacker because it doesn't take that into consideration and it just does like pure damage, or closer to, if it's like ignores 30% of defense. All right, attack interval, the amount of time between two attacks by the same hero. Skill haste, this allows you to use battle skills and ultimates of your heroes faster. So you improve skill haste, you make them faster. That has been something that's changed quite a lot. I remember from the CBT1, skill haste was a main stat on one of the runes. So I was like, oh, this is like the speed boot. Got it. But they took that away and now it's only a substat and only in very niche spots. So maybe the speed thing was a little bit too overpowered and they had to tone it back. All right, so next up here we have crit rate, how likely your hero will land a critical hit when attacking. A critical hit deals a lot more damage. I wish they said, like, sometimes in some games crit hits do 1.5 more damage, 2 times 2 damage, 2.5 times the damage. Like, I kind of wish they would specify, but I guess it doesn't really matter. We can kind of figure that out if you did some testing. Crit damage is the amount of extra damage dealt by a crit hit. That's the hard part, though. This affects this, so it makes it amplified, la la. But yeah. I guess this is just straight how much it amplifies it. All right, Enlightenment. This affects the derivative damage or contributes to the intensity of some skills. Derivative damage, this is the derivative effect generated by a specific skill. Gains an Enlightenment bonus, but cannot trigger a critical hit. So if someone has a kit that's very heavy on Enlightenment, you might not want to build them with crit. But there are some exceptions to this rule, like Eli, for example. He has a passive that can deal bonus derivative damage, scales with Enlightenment, okay. But his AoE is just a simple AoE, like, hit. So I built my Eli with crit rate instead of so much focus on Enlightenment, and I actually did more damage that way, but there's a balance. There's some testing to be done there to see if you go pure Enlightenment and attack versus a full crit rate build, maybe ignoring Enlightenment, or maybe there's somewhere of a balance in between, but that's what testing's all about. And keep in mind, you can reset heroes for the first 8 days of playing if you don't like them. Or you want to test something and then revert it. All right, accuracy. This increases the chance of how likely your heroes can inflict debuffs and control effects on enemies or remove their buffs. So you do need accuracy to remove buffs, someone like Vorash, again, as the great example. And resistance, on the flip side, this reduces the chance of how likely an enemy can inflict debuffs and control effects on your hero or remove them. When an attacker has more accuracy than resistance of their target, the attack is more likely to register. If the target's resistance is higher than the attacker's accuracy by at least 80, the attack is more likely to be resisted. And I don't think they mean attack, they mean the debuff or control effect that's going to land from the attack. But yeah. So the target's resistance is higher than the attacker's accuracy by at least 80, the attack is more likely to be resisted. So you have to have a lot more resistance than accuracy for it to equal out. Just like Raid. Similar. All right. Among them, HP, attack, and defense will scale as your hero levels up, while the other attributes can be improved with the help of improvement, equipment, runes, artifacts, elemental affinity, and food. Don't ignore the power of consumables cooking in this game. It's actually pretty insane. All right, now hero rarities. Heroes can be categorized by their rarities: common, rare, epic, and legendary. A hero of higher rarity will often have better attributes and stronger powers, but they're also more difficult to come by. Among them, legendary heroes have unique inspiration mechanic, which means the ceiling for developing the hero is much higher. Of course, a strong hero can only do so much because it's all about how great the entire team is in different modes and phases. It's a strategy game that focuses on builds and synergies. Deploying high-quality heroes without paying attention to how well they can work will often lead to a disadvantage in combat. All right, and then we'll talk lastly about the summoning system to get these heroes in the first place. So you can spend Starlight Die and Heliolite Die to summon heroes. Heliolite Die can be obtained from quests, exploration, in the shop. There's also many main ways to collect heroes in the game. Many ways, I think they mean. But yeah, also there's a lot of random events where they're popping Heliolite Die, some of the beginner stuff, and they were very nice enough to give us a little bonus for 1 million downloads, so good to see that kind of stuff happening. All right, Otherworld Horn, you guys probably know this if you did the pre-gift event in the early game. Once you've made friends with Gulal, you'll get the Otherworld Horn for free. Go to the Otherworld Horn page of your camp, and you'll spend magic energy to consume or to summon allies of specific types. The magic energy contained within your Otherworld Horn will replenish over time. When using your horn, you could pick 1 to 3 tags to change your ally preferences. While summoning, you'll roll the die 1 time. The higher number you get, the more rare your hero will be, up to a legendary. According to the fixed tags you selected in pre-roll die, you're more likely to get heroes associated with those tags within reasonable rarity range. But it's not a guarantee. If you just pick one, even if you pick 3, it could be one thing that's not any of them. So if you try to pick one, you're like, I really want the ice one. I want, fire. I want Felicity. I know she comes from the horn. And you just keep hitting fire. There's no guarantee it's going to be fire. But also, guys, I just want to remind you that the Horn event that we had before the game came out was boosted rates. More than likely, you're going to be lucky if you get rares. Don't expect a lot of them. Consider yourself lucky if you get rares, very lucky if you get epics, and very few get legendaries, but it definitely happens. I shouldn't say very few, honestly. I know quite a lot of people that got legendaries from the Horn while playing, and I was one of them. So all last season, I got 1 legendary and 2 epics from the Horn from that whole season of gameplay, if you want a little perspective. All right, another note here, other than the 2 methods above, you can also obtain rare heroes from some activities, such as daily sign-ins, New Gift of Life, Feywild, Pillar of Trials, and rewards of journey milestones. So not just to rare heroes, they mean like the summons to be able to do them, the crystals, like the dyes. But yeah, that sums up this video. Hope it was helpful talking through some of the synergies, the stats, and how this whole little system works. It's a really cool system, and I love the way that they allow you to have flexibility with synergizing your team. It just makes me want to try everything and experiment. And yeah, really good job with the game so far. I'm literally enjoying playing Dragonheir again properly. Hope you guys are too, and I'll see you in the next video.